Welcome back. Despite a resilient job market, there are still fears of workers being displaced by technology. Here's a look by the numbers. First, the good news. Canada added a surprising 67,000 jobs in October. The unemployment rate dropped to 6.9%. Both full and part-time work rose on an annual basis, but the bulk of the jobs came from sales of goods. Wholesale and retail trade added 41,000 jobs. Meanwhile, construction was lower, with 15,000 jobs lost. In fact, work in construction and manufacturing are both down between January and October, while service sector employment gained 142,000 jobs at the same time. And for all the fear about AI taking our jobs, so far in Canada that hasn't been the effect. 60% of jobs are highly exposed to AI-related changes, but for businesses using AI, 89% say there's been no change in their employment plans. That story is different in the U.S. Employers there announced 153,000 job cuts in October. That's a 175% gain from October 2024 and 183% above the month prior. Cost cutting was the top reason cited for layoffs in October. AI, the second most cited factor, accounting for 48,414 job cuts so far this year. John Challenger is CEO of Challenger Gray, Christmas has recently recorded that big jump in U.S. layoffs. I spoke with Challenger and started by asking him if the numbers were a surprise to him.
In some ways, yes, because we hadn't seen a big breakout month, but we had seen layoffs increasing this year significantly over last year. We just hadn't seen these big mega layoffs that all of a sudden happened for the first time since 2020 in the month of October.
I also asked Challenger how much of the job softness is about tariffs and a slowdown still to come.
I think that that's the number one factor. The economy is slowing. Companies are now restructuring. Companies in every industry that weren't doing well vis-a-vis their competitors are making cuts and having to go through this cost cutting. But certainly it's not the only factor that we're seeing that's driving these heavy cuts right now.
Challenger has been reporting on jobs for a long time. I asked him if this period is reminiscent of previous tech adoption and its impact on jobs.
I don't think I've ever seen something quite like AI in terms of its potential impact, on workers. Maybe, some of what we saw in the 80s and 90s in manufacturing, not just because of robotics, which is in fact something that was mentioned here. We saw big, heavy cuts in early 2000s because of the dot-com layoffs, but that wasn't a new technology changing the way work was organized. It was just those companies grew so fast that when the air was let out of that bubble, we saw a lot of job cuts. This really is different. It's leading to a kind of a fundamental restructuring of how work's done for many kinds of jobs, both blue collar and white collar.
Previous tech shifts did kill some jobs, but created others. And I asked Challenger if that will be true with AI.
I do believe, certainly longer term, that is what happens. Every time there's new technology, there are jobs that are lost as the world moves to the new paradigm, the economy moves to a new paradigm. But it doesn't happen instantly, and that's where the difficulty lies. The people who lose their jobs have a hard time finding their way into the jobs of the future. And those jobs of the future don't emerge right away. It takes time.
There's a fear that AI will be different and that some jobs will disappear outright and some workers be cut out of the market altogether.
I think that that's the more likely story. The next era will be based on who knows what kinds of companies and what kind of productivity emerges because of this tool. AI might be the greatest tool, maybe since the wheel or something like that, ever invented. And it's going to have enormous impact on the new kinds of companies, offerings, say medical technology. We don't know yet. So I do think it's going to spur the economy long term. It's going to define the next era. We just don't know where those jobs are yet.
Job markets move in cycles. I asked Challenger how resilient the job market in the U.S. feels to him.
Well, isn't that interesting? Because we're talking about, the two forces, one that could drive the economy forward and keep it from being too deep of a recession, AI, and then also then just the kind of the slowdown. We've been through a long up cycle. Economies go through cycles, and we do seem to be on the downside of that cycle. Global affairs certainly are making all of the freedom that created and greased the wheels of the global economy, that seems to be getting much more tight. So I do think we're likely headed towards recession. And yet the thing that's causing layoffs, the second biggest force, is the saving grace. If this recession isn't too deep or we avoid it, it'll probably be because of all the investment in AI.
That was John Challenger, CEO of Challenger Gray and Christmas. In Canada, jobs are holding on, but the economy is also facing some pending job losses in the public sector. Jim Stanford is director of the Centre for Future Work. Jim, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure, Amanda.
So, it's interesting. Governments are often measured, their success is measured on job creation. This one is, of course, announcing public sector cuts, which in a certain way sounds, okay, we're right-sizing government. Those are tens of thousands of very high-quality jobs. Are we worried at all about the effect that will have on the economy?
Oh, certainly. That will have a bit of a drag on the overall labor market. They're trying to downsize the federal public service by about 40,000 positions over the next 3 or 4 years. Some of those cuts have already happened, actually. Some of the others will happen via retirement incentives and other voluntary measures, but it still means fewer people are working, and that is the last thing Canada's economy needs right now.
And we've been having this conversation about the role that technology will play in future layoffs. You and I have talked about this in the past. Not everybody is as gloomy as some about, that AI will displace everything. But it does feel, Jim, that we're seeing increasingly companies are seeing some cost savings here and that, fewer people can do the same work. This is the name of the game with technology. How worried do we need to be?
Well, there's so many different things happening with AI, Amanda. On a net basis, I think so far it has created more jobs than it has destroyed, but mostly via this enormous boom, you might even say bubble, in AI-related investments, including the programming and everything, but also the data centers and the power sources and so on. I think we're maybe seeing the beginnings of some changes in labor demand where AI is being used instead of staff. Mostly in terms of slow hiring. We haven't seen big AI-related layoffs, but I think we are seeing a tendency for less people being hired at the entry level in the labor market, and that could be related to companies saying, you know what, I don't actually need those new people. I can do it with technology instead. So many things happening there. I'm not predicting the end of work. That's definitely not going to happen. But there will be some disruptions and shifts in how the labor market works, no doubt about it.
So on that front, there is this prospect that companies will become ever more profitable, but with fewer workers. But we've been facing that prospect for really decades in a way, but certainly the last decade. You're not overly worried about that, or do we have the policies in place to meet it if it does happen?
I don't think we have adequate policies. So we have seen growing inequality. We've seen an amazing concentration of wealth in that AI sector. Just look at the makeup of the stock market valuations these days. And you know that billionaires are collecting that wealth. Canada's richest person is now a crypto billionaire who was pardoned from jail by Donald Trump. So that tells you that this tendency towards concentration and oligarchy, if you like, will come to Canada as well. And I do think we need stronger redistributive policies to make sure these billionaires pay more tax and that other Canadians are supported, both in work through stronger wages and working conditions, but those out of work through good income support benefits.
We don't have a ton of time, just a few seconds, but on that front, the government is trying to cut costs, but it's also taking on debt. Are you worried about the fiscal ability to meet some of these challenges?
Given how the world is unfolding and given that Canada is in a fight for its future right now, that really is well down the list of priorities. Canada's debt is small by international standards, and if we're using that debt to finance a stronger economy that can stand up to Trump, it's a good decision.
Jim, always good to have your thoughts. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Jim Stanford is director of the Centre for Future Work. Coming up, the federal budget included efforts to kickstart investments in Canada. Will it work? That's still ahead. But first, PayPal is expanding its buy now, pay later service here, adding itself to several other options in the market in Canada. PayPal will partner with companies like the Home Depot and Ticketmaster to offer installment plans of 4 interest-free payments over 6 weeks. And it's true, it's all good if you're good on your debt. If not, watch out for the late fees. We're back after this.